Welcome to Satsunami. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Satsunami. I'm Satsunami, and I'm joined once again by my awesome co-host Adam. Hey there, thanks for coming here, especially after last week when we spent about 2 hours talking about Deadly Premonition.
Honestly, some of the best 2 hours of my life.
Yeah,
I would do it all again.
Yeah. Put me in, coach, I'm ready.
Don't tempt me. Don't tempt me.
Yeah, that was a great session. But speaking of, this is like the kind of most convenient segue ever I think we've ever had in the episodes where it's like, speaking of games that we like and think deserve a sequel, yeah, today we are going to be talking about our personal choices for our most wanted video game sequels. So I think, Adam, I mean, have you had that experience before where you played a game, you think, this game's awesome, I can't wait to play more, and then you look it up online and then suddenly you realise there's just nothing there?
Yep, that's happened a couple of times. I'm trying to think of any notable examples. There's only one game that I was going to talk about. Like, I'm being disappointed to hear like what happened to like the series feature and stuff. But yeah, there's that horrible thing where you're just like, I could just do it just once and more in my life, but you've only got that much, and you have to live with it, parcel it out. So
Please.
Write fan fiction in your head and online.
Yeah.
That's all you can.
It literally is like please sir, can I just have a scrap of a sequel? And it's like, what are you doing here? Get out of here. Just go. Yeah.
Is that or you come on podcasts like this and ramble, like I did a couple of episodes back about the Medal of Honor series?
Oh, there is nothing wrong about rambling on this podcast. You are more than welcome to come on and ramble about
I've
this.
come to the right place.
You're amongst friends here. So before we kind of jump into the main topic and, rip the band-aid off, as it were, I actually have a question for you. And it's something, again, like I asked you before we jumped on stream. So as I said, the idea is that usually there's always that one game that we play in our lives where we really want like a sequel to it. We want more of that kind of content. The question is, when does a game lose like its right to have a sequel? Like, what could a game do that's so, crimes against gaming, as it were, that it couldn't deserve a sequel?
It's an interesting question. Honestly, the only thing that I can think that you don't deserve a sequel at all is to be like maybe morally reprehensible.
Well, yeah.
Like so. Just to pick like an obvious example, like there should never be a sequel to a game like Custer's Revenge because it's morally reprehensible on every single level, and doesn't bring anything to the world except hate and whatever. So, I mean, there's a lot of games out there, and there's games that we personally don't want to see sequels to. There's like maybe some game series we think just aren't fun or boring. You might even like think they're kind of blights on the industry with like trends they have if they're like really heavy into loot boxes or something like that. But like I think taking the kind of personal side. Well, I could make a whole I could talk for 2 hours right now about game series that should just be cancelled. It should never be allowed. It shouldn't be allowed to make any more. But that's just personal choice. So I think to be objective, I really think the only criteria is just if your product is morally reprehensible.
Yeah.
Like just stop. Like we don't need any more postals. I'm pretty sure that point's been made now. Yeah, very funny. But at the same time, like you seem like trash human beings who made this, so just stop.
Yeah. Well,
that would be my answer there.
Yeah, well, you'd be surprised at the amount of people who, like, I'm thinking off the top of my head, like, typical controversial games, like, quote-unquote, with, like, GTA and things, which aren't the worst games, but then you get games that Rockstar, the same publishers, of course, have released, like, Manhunt.
Yeah.
And a lot of people saying, oh, when's Manhunt 2 coming out? And it's like, well, oh, no, it did come out. Sorry, Manhunt. Yeah. Jeez, that's bad. Like, I just completely suppressed that. Like, a follow-up, rather, to that one. And it's like, oh, when's the next one coming out? And it's like, as you said, it's like a game that doesn't... Not that it doesn't deserve a sequel, but just that it wouldn't bring anything new to the table. Yeah. If you know what I mean. It's like, it wouldn't be something you would want to encourage as a sequel, if you know what I mean. Yeah, so, no, I totally agree. If it's something that's, like, not going to you know, it's like Presence isn't going to give anything to the gaming community and things, then yeah, I totally agree with that. And again, like, that would be a good Chatsunami, like, future episode to just talk about those.
There we go. A future tease there, maybe.
Yeah, foreshadowing. Let's just jump right into it. So basically, what we've done is we have both gone away and we have both chosen 3 separate games to talk about this subject. So we've chosen 2 games that we would like a sequel to, and, you know, like personal favourites and things like that. We have also chosen a game that basically we would not like a sequel to, but we'll save like that juicy, you know, that juicy hot take for the very end of the podcast, I think. Or after we give our like games of sequels we want. Yeah, Adam, do you want to kick us off with your first one?
I certainly can do. Yep. So it's a really interesting topic, this one, and I was really excited to talk about it. And, you know, I was trying to, like, when you first brought it up, I was going through my memory banks of being like, what games do I love, but what ones, like, you know, have sort of faded away and haven't been in the spotlight for a good many years. And the first one that came to my mind was the Deus Ex series. Now, just to get everyone, I've never played the original Deus Ex, and I never played the one that came out on the original Xbox. I think it's like Invisible War or something like that, I think it's titled. So I never played either of those 2, but I did play, and I absolutely loved a Human Revolution, which was sort of like which is kind of a reboot of it. So it came out in 2011, if I remember rightly, and yeah, like I didn't play it until a good few years after that. But I just really fell in love with it, and I thought it had such an interesting and engaging story, and I explored some really kind of interesting themes like transhumanism and other kind of things.
Sorry, I was just going to say, was that before Cyberpunk started doing it?
Yes. Yeah, so I just loved Human Revolution. I thought the story was so good and everything, and I thought the gameplay is just some of the most fun gameplay in any kind of like RPG I think I've ever played. Like, for me, it's the perfect example of that kind of like player choice, and I know that concept has kind of been a bit done to death now and is perhaps too prevalent. But for me, like, I thought it was an absolute perfect blend of giving you the option of characterizing, or of like customizing your character to be all stealthy if you want, or to be kind of like hacker, or if you want to go down the full kind of action guns blazing route. There was just so many cool options to allow you to do any of those kind of things. It just made it such a fun game to play, and I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, there's a couple of stumbling blocks in the process. Like the Human Revolution was infamous for its terrible boss fights, which basically the problem with them was, like, if you hadn't customized your character into like a kind of action, like gun heavy one, then you were basically screwed, because there was no options to be stealthy or, like, you know, to really hack or anything. You kind of had to engage in straight up combat. So if you were like me and you'd made like a really stealthy character, they were bloody hard. They did actually go back and retroactively fix this issue when they released like a remastered version of Human Revolution a few years back, and I think they added in options to accommodate players who'd gone for kind of stealthy and hacking routes. So that was good, but it was a problem in the original game. But apart from that, they were just such fun games. I just had such a blast playing them. I thought the gameplay was just perfect, and it was this great blend. And I said I really loved the story. So Human Revolution did get a sequel, which was called Mankind Divided, which was released in 2016. The story was a lot weaker in Mankind Divided. I was reading some stuff, and it seemed like they'd made Human Revolution almost to be like a one-off. They'd kind of just made it as a game, a separate game by itself. They never really had any plans for a sequel, but because it was very popular, because it sold well and it was quite critically acclaimed, they decided to make a sequel. So you can kind of tell it's a little awkward.
Yeah.
It's a little awkward trying to transition the story from Human Revolution to Mankind Divided. But, you know, and it is weaker, and it doesn't have the same, didn't hold my attention like Human Revolution did. But it's still got some interesting themes in it, exploring ideas of kind of segregation and more kind of transhumanism, which was interesting. And the gameplay was still great. It still had that great blend of gameplay, and it was just such a solidly built game that I really just thought, like, couldn't find flaws really when I was playing it, and just had a lot of fun. It reviewed okay, Mankind Divided, and I think it sold okay as well, but it didn't sell well enough. So basically, the publisher, who is it Square Enix? I think it's Square Enix.
No, it is Square Enix, yeah.
It's Square Enix, yeah. They put the series basically kind of on hold, and the teams were transitioned, I think, to work on Tomb Raider games. It's not been cancelled officially, the game, but it's kind of on indefinite hold now. They were saying, Square Enix said they were waiting until they had more staff and the inclination, which kind of makes you feel that it's like, we don't really have any plans to do anything game series anytime soon, which is a shame because I said I really enjoyed them, and I think that as a core experience, I think that gameplay experience is just so polished and so refined that I would just love to get another game just to play around in that kind of with those gameplay mechanics again, because I just think it's so well designed. And I think there is still interesting stories that you could do in it. And I mean, I would either love to see a kind of sequel, like almost like a sequel to the story of Mankind Divided, like perhaps just a conclusion. You know, make it a trilogy, just kind of round that kind of story arc off. But even if they didn't want to carry on that story, I would love to just see a totally new story with the same kind of gameplay mechanics and everything. But I'd love to see a completely new story in the Deus Ex universe, because the Mankind Divided and Human Revolution are prequels to the original Deus Ex. So I think there's scope to, if you wanted to like stay there, or if you wanted to go beyond, you know, the story of the original Deus Ex. There's plenty of opportunities there. So yeah, two games that I had such fun playing with. And I thought they did explore some interesting concepts and had a pretty good story over the two games. And I'm just kind of sad that it's on hold now, and I really would love to just see another sequel to it and just dive back into that world and just experience that great gameplay again.
And I mean, as you said, it's like such a massive world. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not expecting, like, you know, I was thinking of it in Star Wars terms, where it's like Jim the Robot Cleaner, a Deus Ex story, you know.
I'd play it.
Well, yeah, to be fair,
give it to me.
See if they kind of made it like one of those indie games where it's like, yeah, I would play that. I would totally play that.
I'd love to just play where you could have, where Jim the Robot Cleaner can choose to like stealthily clean the building, or he can be like all full, like just like speeding down the hallways with massive like brushes, just brushing up everything, like where he hacks other robots to do his cleaning job. I'd play the hell out of that game, and I'd love it probably.
Well, where you have to upgrade to like hack the Roombas across the...
Yeah, exactly. So you start off with like crappy little like Roombas that don't get anything, and you need to upgrade your hacking to get the big cleaning machines to come and help you out. Just because, and I'm obviously joking about this, but it's just because I think the gameplay was just so well balanced for the most part. Anyways, apart from a few exceptions, I just really had a blast. And I just want more of that gameplay.
That is a good choice. Not gonna lie, because I have to admit, I've only played like the beginning of it, and I always remember playing like, is it Deus Ex Human Revolution, the one that came out in like 2012? I want to say,
2011.
2011, sorry. And I remember playing the beginning, and I thought, right, okay, I'm gonna like do a stealth build, and then as soon as I stepped out, I got caught immediately. So I just went in all guns blazing. I was like, yeah, I'm not enjoying this game.
It's brutal. Like, it is brutal. That's one thing I will say about it. You need to because it is really, really difficult. Like when you're first starting out, but the great, what I like about it is that the more effort you put into it, and you do have to put effort into it, but the more effort you put into it, you get to unlock like skills that make it just much easier and much more fluid. So you can turn yourself invisible at points if you're being stealthy, or you can get like crazy like bomber. Maybe that was in Mankind Divided, but you can get your arms can launch like tons of like grenades and stuff if you want to go actiony, which makes it that much easier. But you're right, it is like you do have to put the effort into the beginning.
Yeah. I have to admit, I do have to play more of it, right enough. I'm just wondering, do you want me to... Why don't
you say your first one?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so basically this is like a bit of a departure from the world of Deus Ex. But yeah, the first game I chose was Banjo-Kazooie, and there is a bit of, how to put it, there's kind of, not controversy, like I'm not saying like Banjo-Kazooie's like hitting the tabloids or something. So the kind of story behind it was, as you may know, like if any of you guys like grew up in the 90s, like Banjo-Kazooie was like a massive platforming game. It came out, I remember getting it by chance. I can't remember like if I asked for it, but it was one of those games that my mum got me, and I was like, okay, I'll play it on the N64, see how it is. I played it, absolutely loved it. Never really played much of the sequel. Like, I played bits and pieces of it, but I still enjoyed it. After that, like, after the second game came out, there was, like, this long period of nothing from the producers. They used to be called Rareware. They used to be a company that only worked with Nintendo, and then they got sold off to Microsoft, and then they became Rare. I don't know why they dropped the Ware bit of their name, but anyway. Yeah, they like sat on like their games for ages, didn't make anything. And then I think one of the first games when they came to Microsoft was like a lot of Kinect stuff. Like, you know, the Wii Sports kind of stuff for the Kinect.
Heavy into the Kinect, you're right.
Yeah. And then there was a trailer that came out, and it was like showing how Banjo-Kazooie was coming back to like the Xbox 360. And this was like 2008 was when the third game came out. Like everyone was hyped because they thought, oh, this is going to be a new Banjo-Kazooie game. And, you know, and I was going to say glorious 3D, but it's already in 3D. You know, it's like glorious graphics of the like 360. Like everyone was really excited for it because it was going to be this next like big platformer. And then you play the game, and long story short, the game is essentially a vehicle building simulator. Like, they actually make... This is the really weird thing about the game. It's, like, so tone deaf. And I could honestly rant about this for hours, but essentially, like, long story short, the game you begin and you're like, Banjo is like a really fat and Kazooie's like hanging out the backpack, and you're playing like video games and everything, and they like make fun of the old games by being like, oh, no one wants to play platformers anymore, they just want to shoot things. And that was like when COD was coming out, so that was like drawing parallels between that, and it's like, wow, I never thought like I would get my gaming, not controversy, the gaming like commentary from bloody Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts. I was just like, is this game serious? Like, it's just so tone deaf. So after that, there was nothing. Like, after 2008, they just dropped it like it was hot. And it wasn't until, like, I want to say 19 or 20, where they released Banjo-Kazooie for Super Smash Brothers. Yeah, like, anybody can, like, out there, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was the last, like, major, or that's the first gaming cameo, or gaming appearance since then, which it just is weird because it is a game that was like massive and it had like such a big fan base that, you know, that Nintendo could like capitalize on. And I have discussed this with like other people, but yeah, I honestly have a bone to pick with Nintendo. Like, they have like massive, you know, franchises, and they don't utilize them very well. And I think especially for like Banjo-Kazooie, like as soon as they sold it, it was kind of out of their hands. Like, they didn't really do anything with it until it was like sold off, and then Microsoft took it, and then they just kind of put it on a dusty shelf. See, the thing is, it's like, you would think that because the gaming landscape is kind of changing, because you know, when we were growing up, when it was like platformers were big when we were younger, and then it moved on to shooters, and then it was like sandbox games, and then, you know, now technically it's kind of battle royale shooter games.
Yeah.
I mean, there is room there for like another platformer, and especially with the nostalgia factor, I do think like they could have, if they really worked at it, they probably could. Like, I would like to see another Banjo-Kazooie, but as a how to put it, like, you know, like, not as a shell of itself, like, not as a franchise, if you know what I mean. And by franchise, I mean, like, well, we've got Greg's the Baker over here, where they just kind of buy the rights, if you know what I mean. And then they go and set up their shop, they do their own thing, while having, like, the name.
And gets every second weekend at Nintendo's home.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, how... Oh, it's strange. But yeah, that would be my first one. So yeah, what? So I don't want to rush you. You're like, so your second game.
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, there's basically no links between the games that we're playing. There's no unfortunate logical like selection. As you said, it was quite a jump from Banjo-Kazooie to Deus Ex. And I'm about to take us completely off the beaten path now.
Oh, I can't wait.
But so I'm currently playing this game at the minute. And I have to give a shout. I don't know if he's in the comments or not, but I'm going to give a shout out to S Banks, who got me this for Christmas. Thank you so much. It is a blast. I'm absolutely loving it. But I'm playing this game currently. It's on Steam. It's called Darkest of Days. Have you ever heard of Darkest of Days?
I don't know why that sounds familiar. I haven't played it.
Have you actually heard?
Maybe not. Like, maybe I'm getting it mixed up with like Darkest Dungeon or something.
Well, what do you like? What are your when I said Darkest of Days? Did you like have any kind of memories? Like any even like what type of game it was? Or
nah, I don't know. I don't know why I'm thinking of. Do you remember that, like, was it Curse of the Druids or something, where it was like the really iconic cover at the front? No. Or just like, yeah, I don't know why, but I'm just thinking of like a cover with a guy in a cloak or something, like stalking her.
Oh, that's not the cover of this one. But that cover sounds awesome. Yeah, so I don't know if anybody in the comments has heard of this game, put in and say yay or nay. But yeah, so Darkest of Days, it's a shooter. It came out in 2010. developed by this company called 8 Monkey Labs, who I was not able to find like anything really about. I don't know if they're still in business, I don't know if they've changed name, been bought over or whatever. But basically, so it's a first-person shooter, and basically the concept is you're a soldier in the American Army in the late 1870s, and you take part in the Battle of Little Bighorn, which is this famous battle between the United States soldiers and tribe of Native Americans, and it's kind of this group of American soldiers basically gets defeated and they're all slaughtered, and you play as one of these soldiers. But just before you're about to be killed during this battle, this time traveler shows up and rescues you and brings you to this like futuristic lab where you then are told that there's this company, and it's called like Chronotech or something, and basically their job is to ensure that the time stream isn't like affected and that every like people are in the right place and the events of history are playing out. So they're almost like kind of like time police, basically time cops or something like that. It's not a famous Jean-Claude Van Damme film, but they to make sure the time stream is like, you know, keeps on the right track. And so you're basically recruited into this organization, and you're initially told that like 2 very important people have gone missing from periods of time, and so you need to get sent. You get sent to those times to try and find them. And basically, it's during one's gone lost during the American Civil War, and the other one's gone lost during the First World War. And so basically, you jump into like famous battles, those famous battles to try and find them. And it turns out that there's another group of time travelers who are trying to mess with the time stream, and you know, so you're having to battle them as well. So I said I'm about halfway through the game, and like I know kind of where the story goes, but it's this crazy kind of time travel kind of jumping thing, loosely connected together. And honestly, it's just such a blast to play. Like I'm just having the concept, I think, is just so fun, and like I just think it's one of these concepts that's got such endless possibilities. Like the plot's wacky, but it's really engaging. Like there's actually I was actually reading there's some quite cool systems behind the game. Like they developed a complete new games engine for this one, and basically the big focus is because they wanted to have these big battles from history. They wanted to like be able to put like a lot of characters on screen. So this engine can like render up to like 300 characters on screen at a time. So it does actually feel like you're in very big engagements, you know, and it's quite impressive, and there is a good scale behind it. And they have actually really impressive attention to historical detail as well. They put a lot of research into kind of locations and sort of weapons and things, which is really cool. But as well, there's points as well where you know, like you find yourself a bit out of guns. So one of your other time traveling buddies like shows up and gives you like this futuristic machine gun to like mow down Confederate soldiers with. So it's just such fun like that. And you have like futuristic shotguns that you're blasting like German soldiers with and everything. Like it's that great attention to detail, but also enough of like a sense of fun to be like, yeah, here's a future weapon. Don't worry, this isn't going to affect the time stream when you like start mowing down like soldiers in the 1800s with you know like 100 bullets a minute and stuff. And it's just I don't know. I've just having such a fun blast with it. And I think the concept that I think maybe the one thing about the game is the time periods are quite limited, and that really it's the American Civil War, the First World War, and I think as well it goes to the Second World War. Then the kind of finale takes place in like Pompeii. Which is the Roman city, like on the day that Mount Vesuvius erupted, is sort of where the game ends. So you kind of have those, but a lot of the time periods are quite close together and it's quite limited. But I think the concept was such that you could really just broaden this out, and you could have players like fighting in any kind of time period. You know, like there's enough ridiculousness there for you to be fighting. I don't know. You could go all the way back to the dinosaur times, you know, or whatever you want. Like, you know, Middle Ages, Dark Ages, you know, Roman Greek, whatever you want. I just think there's a lot of like scope there to make like a game. But again, as I say, like there was no sequel to this game. I think it left on a slight cliffhanger. The story, I said, I can confirm when I complete it. But there was no sequel announced. Like I don't know what happened to this company. Like I've never seen anything else about this game. You know, this game came out and then I think that's it. It's dead and dormant, and I doubt it'll ever see the light of day again. Apart from that, but you know what? It's a little gem, and I'm having a lot of. I love shooters, as you know, and this one is just a lot of fun to me, and it's just very creative, and I think it's a blast. And I would just love to see more. I just think it's such an interesting like concept behind it that I want more. Damn it, give me more.
I actually don't think I've ever heard a game that suits you to a T.
I know, this is almost like they designed this game for me.
Yeah, like both. It's all about history and it's a shooter. Like, even I'm thinking now, my God, like just the way you were describing it there, I thought, my God, that sounds awesome.
And it's got science fiction as well, and I love a good bit of science fiction. You're right, they designed this game for me. I'm just sorry that it took me until a decade later to actually play it. Maybe if I'd done more at the time, more could come from it. I'll have to go back in the time stream now. Do something.
Yeah. It's like an alternate time stream where you're not in Satsunami, and it's like, no.
My sole purpose is to get more of Darkest of Days.
Yeah.
Keep pumping the sequels out.
I don't care the cost.
That horrible dystopian feature that sounds.
God. It's like Terminator all over again. Yeah, I honestly haven't heard it. I'll need to check that out after this. Is it a 2D game or is it a 3D game?
No, it's a 3D game.
It's a 3D
game. Yeah, it's a first-person shooter. It's really, like the graphics are like the graphics. Again, you're trying to judge it by the times of. I was trying to think what other games came out in 2010.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't look as good as some. I think that was original Black Ops, wasn't it? It doesn't look as good as like the original Black Ops, but still, I think it looks pretty good compared to like I've played a lot of other shooters that are kind of fit this of being like lesser studios making them and stuff, and this one is head and shoulders above any of those that I've played. So I think it does look quite impressive for its time.
I'm going to be checking that out after this.
It's on Steam. It is on Steam, so you can still. I think it was released on Xbox 360 as well, but I've never been able to track. Because I originally tried to track a copy down there, but I'm not sure if it was maybe just a region thing. Perhaps it was just like North America. It got released. It was only on PC that it got released in Europe.
Yeah,
but it is on Steam. If you want to check it out, it is on Steam. So if my mad ramblings and ravings have and if you're like, wow, like if you're the other like person in the world that's like, wow, this sounds exactly like the game for me, then I'd recommend you go check it out. It's fun.
I was going to say, this is the problem when we dredge up like old games that we really want to play. I mean, it was like the other week where we were talking about Deadly Premonition, and I was like, oh god damn it. So like the next day I ended up buying the sequel. So I was like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, it's worth it. It's totally worth it. No, that's a good choice. And speaking of, again, smooth segues here, I was kind of laughing when you were talking about time travel and shooter games, because my next game is like along the similar lines.
Oh my god, there's actually a link here? I actually just realised.
Yeah, so the next game, and my final game that I chose, honestly, there's just so many games that we could talk about, like wanting a sequel to, but I don't know, when I was kind of looking through a lot of the games, it's like a lot of the games either have a sequel or they've kind of branched out into too much until like, like a hideous Cthulhu beast of like different genres and things. Like I was saying this to you before the stream, I was talking about like the Sonic the Hedgehog series and things as like a game that we wouldn't want a sequel to, and oh god, yeah, it's just because it's like branched out so much, it's like hard to define, you would have to like narrow it down to one series and everything, and yeah, it's just like it's a terrible autopsy of a game. But speaking of good games instead, yeah, one of the games that I chose for games that I would want a sequel to was Time Splitters. Now, Time Splitters is another weird one. See, when it came out, did you play it initially?
No.
No.
It was years after that I got around to it.
See, I was the same. So I was at university when one of my friends, came to visit, and he was staying over, and he said, let's go to town. So we went to town, and we went to this second-hand DVD shop, or it's DVDs and games, but we went to a second-hand shop called CEX over here. I still refuse to call it by what it's actually called, but anyway, it's such a silly name. But we ended up going there, and I saw Time Splitters, and he turned around and he was like, oh, you should buy Time Splitters. And I was like, I don't... £3, I don't know. And he was like, you should try it. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll buy it, So I played the second one, and it plays very much like GoldenEye, the N64 game, like James Bond GoldenEye. It plays very similar to that, but even then, I absolutely loved it. Played it, I loved the humour, I loved, see the settings, jumping from, place to place all across the globe. And then I loved it so much, and I played through it, in a weekend, I think, with my friend, and I decided, they've got the sequel in there for, I think it was a King's Ransom at the time. It was, £5. For a student at the time, I was like, I could buy half a Domino's pizza, or I could buy Time Splitters. So I ended up buying Time Splitters Future Perfect, which came out in 2005, would you believe? And it's like I was saying at the beginning, it's one of those games that I played, absolutely adored, absolutely loved it. And then I turned to my friend and I'm like, oh, right, so where's the next one? And he was looking at me like, I'm sorry, Satsu, but there's no next one. And it's like, what do you mean there's no next one? I gotta have my Time Splitters game. And sorry, just to kind of explain what Time Splitters is, it is essentially you play it's not really as similar to Darkest of Days. It's more kind of goofy and over the top. It's basically you play a time agent, I think, or whatever the equivalent is to a time agent in the game, and you're trying to stop these aliens called time splitters who are just like wreaking havoc through time and space. Yeah, it's just like, it's kind of wacky humour, over the top kind of, you know, comedy and things like that. And I mean, the shooting's not great, but it's not the worst I've ever seen. But it's more like the settings that really make it, I would say. And yeah, I just absolutely fell in love with it. But until then, I think they said that they were working on like a fan game for it. But I mean, that was like when I was still in university, so like the early 2010s and everything. Yeah, I mean, it's 2021 now, and there's still like, there's rumours and like people saying, oh, you know, the old developers are going to get back into it. Because I think the old developers either went like bankrupt or they just stopped making it.
Yeah, they went into financial administration in 2009. Then they got bought over, and I think that their new studio then got shut down, and they're somewhere else now. But I think that it's basically just gone.
Yeah, it's just the tragedy.
It really is.
I mean, it is, because it is like, see if you can play it, like, to all the people listening out there, if you can play Time Splitters and you haven't before, I would wholeheartedly recommend it. I mean, the second one, like, gameplay-wise, doesn't hold up as well, because it's like, you know, that kind of auto-aiming, when you point to someone and you just shoot from the hip, and if you're aiming, like, down your sights, it's like a really loose, like, crosshairs and everything, like, coming up on the screen, and you're like, I don't know. As I said, the setting and the story and everything, it balances it out, and I would definitely recommend it, but it is definitely a game series I would like to see continued. I do think it has a lot of potential, especially, like, in this day and age, like, having years for it to kind of sit there and, you know, like, mull over, like, you know, a fine wine, kind of mature. Because there's so much you could do with it, but yeah, I don't think we're going to get it anytime soon. Even the fan game, or whatever the mod that they're bringing out, I don't think they're going to have anything.
No, I think it looks like it's going to be like a remake of the original. I think, because I've never played the first Time Splitters game. I played the other two that you mentioned.
Yeah, same.
Never played the original, so I think it's going to be like an HD remake of that original one, rather than actual like a sequel.
That's depressing.
That is an excellent choice. Honestly, I feel wholeheartedly. I think as well, like, not only should there be a sequel, Time Splitters, but I think as well that Time Splitters 2 and Future Perfect desperately need remasters. Because they were never made backwards compatible with the. I don't know whether this was the case with PlayStation or not, but with Xbox they were never made backwards compatible. So to play those original games, you have to dig out. You have to have an original Xbox, and I do have one, but I've got limited space. So like I've had to box it up and put it away. So it's just a shame that I can't just take the discs, you know, and just shove them into my Xbox One or my 360 and just fire up that sweet action, because they're such fun games. Like both of those ones are such fun. I had great fun playing them when I was a kid. I went back to them later. I loved them. Like I know if I shoved them in right now, I would have an absolute blast playing them again. And yeah,
actually, I'm quite surprised that they're not backwards compatible, because they're definitely backwards compatible for the PlayStation 3.
Are they? That's so bizarre that they're not for the Xbox, but for whatever reason, they just never were.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. I think in the early days of the Xbox 360, they weren't like motivated enough to get the original Xbox games. Like you can buy some of them, but not all of them. I don't know. It's a weird one, because I think was that not the PlayStation's like main kind of selling point rather, where it was like, oh, everything's backwards compatible with the PlayStation 2.
That was the big thing with the PlayStation 3. The PlayStation 2. I think remember that being the PlayStation 3 as well. That was a big thing.
Yeah, and
at the time, and then it currently it's something that Xbox has built on that. You know, that they've really pushed that of recent, but for some reason, like these two just never. I don't know whether it's who owns the rights or whatever, or I don't even know who. I think it's a company called Crytek or something. I don't really know much about them, so I don't know, you know, who they're affiliated with. But it's a crying shame, because those games are awesome. Yeah. And they deserve to be rehabilitated again.
So, speaking of a very depressing point, I was going to say, yeah, we're going to move on to probably like our game choices that we definitely wouldn't want a sequel to. So, I'm going to let you, like, I know you've kind of been building this up for quite a while, so I'm going to let you take the floor in this one, because I'm really hyped. I'm hyped to hear what you have to say. That's
I
almost...
was originally gonna just take this time to lambast the Assassin's Creed franchise and say that it should die. It should
Yeah.
die a death. But you know what? Like that's a very subjective and very personal. Just because I honestly found Assassin's Creed Odyssey one of the most boring games to play ever. Like, it just bored me, and I spent like a good 5 months playing that game. So that says a lot about me, to be honest. I need to find better hobbies. But like, but I know a lot of people do like the Assassin's Creed and do like what they've become. And you know what? I was honestly thinking about it, and I thought like they probably could entice me back into the series again. You know, there probably is a game that could get me back to playing that series again. So I won't say that, but I was thinking about it, and I thought, well, what other ones could I go with? And the one that just sprang to my mind after a while was, I don't think they should ever make. I think the Outlast, and I know, and then I just found out today. You told me this series was getting a sequel, but I honestly think there should be no more Outlast 1 is a really, really good game. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was thoroughly scared playing it. I know you probably felt very similar to when you played it, and it's memorable.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, it is really good. But I have to be honest, Outlast Whistleblower, which was the DLC to the Outlast game, it just was not fun. Like, it's kind of fun to begin with, but some of the material they have in there is just, it's not scary, it's just disgusting. And I'm like, what are you trying to do here? Is it just shock value? It's like some of these horror films that just go for pure shock value. It's like, you know, you're not funny, you're not impressing me. This is just gross and disgusting. And honestly, like, it just makes me not want to ever meet anybody who's associated with making that game. And then I've not played Outlast 2, but from what I've seen and from what I've heard, it sounds like that was very much the direction they kept going.
Yeah.
That kind of shock gore and like, let's make it as gross and disgusting and like, you know, get morally reprehensible as we can. And then getting towards this territory that I'm saying. And I honestly just think, unless they're gonna clean up their act, have a good long look at themselves in the mirror, and think, right, what are we doing here? Let's get back to making actual scary games, you know, that aren't just gross and disgusting, you know, and just shock horror. I think that series should end. As I said, I did not know there was a third one coming out until you dropped that bombshell on me today. So remains to be seen. Perhaps they'll get themselves back into my good graces, but I don't know. I feel they found a lane, and they're just gonna drag their gory, bloody entrails down it, and just, I don't know, keep going the way they're going. So stop it. That's what I'm saying. Stop it now.
This has been your PSA from Adam of Satsunami.
I don't know. You sound like a Victorian schoolmaster. Enough of that now.
Go to your room.
Clean your nose and get it. It's not cricket.
Yeah. You know, like, I was laughing because I remember you did tell me that, and so basically they brought out Outlast first, and then they brought out Whistleblower, as you said, which I still haven't plucked up the courage to actually play. I think I do have it, but I'm like, do I want to stream it? Probably not. And then they brought out the second one, which, as you said, is just as gory. And then they kind of started re-releasing it as like a trilogy series, or they called it like Outlast Trinity, I think. That was like the bundle. And yeah, so I can hear the disgust. She said that like, oh.
Sorry.
No. But yeah, apparently they brought out a trailer ages ago for it, and it was basically, I can't remember what it's called, Outlast Trials, and I think it might be like a multiplayer game. It's meant to be set like before the start of the first one, but in the asylum or something. I don't know. It's a really weird like concept, but they've been teasing it for absolutely ages. Like, I'll tell you how far back it went. I think it was like last year, the year before. I remember seeing this trailer, and it's, you know, like when people put like a really fake title for a video.
Oh yeah.
Like they'll say, "Oh, trailer for Outlast movie." Or trailer for, you know, that was the title for this one anyway. And it was like, right, okay, let's see what this like fan edit is. And then I saw it, and it looked like, it did look like Outlast. I thought, is this a fan film? What is this? And then it came up as like Trials, and it's, yeah, like everyone was like, oh, when's it coming out? And I think it's one of those games that it's teased like far too early, and then it just kind of never comes out. Like after the initial teaser trailer, there's like nothing about it. I don't know if there's been anything since. I mean, I'm not like that. I like the first one, but I'm not that big a fan of Outlast.
What's it called?
Like,
Outlast Trials?
Outlast Trials, yeah. I don't know. I don't know if it's... Maybe it's already been released. Like, maybe I'm sitting here saying, Oh yeah,
It's got this year as its release date.
that's weird. I'm sure it was last year. Although then again, because of current events, it probably would have
Yeah,
got pushed back. But
as you said, it was June last year the teaser trailer dropped, so it's been released for some time
right, okay.
this year. So is it like you say it was going to be like a kind of multiplayer sort of? Is it kind of like a Phasmophobia style?
I honestly have no idea because they haven't released, at least as far to my knowledge, they haven't released any like gameplay footage of it.
Okay.
Because initially they were saying that it could be a VR game because all the characters are wearing like these goggles over their faces, like like a VR set. So that's what people were thinking. Oh, it's going to be Outlast VR. And the only thing I remember is at the very beginning you're running away from like a big guy with a big axe or something like that. And then you see this like girl who's like standing on top of this barricade, and she's like, "Come on, come on!" And you grab her hand, and she gets like shot with an arrow, and then you get cornered, and you just get like chopped by the guy, and it fades to black, and then it's like Outlast Trials. Get your free double XP code with Doritos, kind of thing.
So it sounds from that like they have not changed at all their MO.
Yeah.
It sounds like, again, it's just going to be in-your-face shock. So you know what?
Yeah.
Again, stop this now. Okay, you've had your fun. You've had your fun now, but seriously, this is getting too much now, okay?
Oh, God, yeah. I don't know if it will be like kind of Phasmo, but it won't be as subtle, that's for sure. I think they've I think they've dug their trench in that IP of We Are the Shock game.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it's that thing as well. Like it loses impact. I remember seeing I remember listening to somebody who reviewed Outlast 2, and they said like within the first like 10 minutes, basically somebody had one of the monsters had like cornered them and slammed had a giant axe and slammed that giant axe into their groin and then pulled it out. And it's like once you've done that in the first 10 minutes, like where'd you go? Like that you've literally laid all your cards on the table, and how can you be shocked again? Like oh no, I got hit in my stomach this time by the giant axe. Like that's the problem with the shock. It doesn't. It has okay, fine. You get that great maybe initial thing, you're like but then what if it happens again? Am I like, oh, here we go again? It's that kind of thing we said when we talked about the Five Nights at Freddy's.
I was just thinking that. Yeah, I was just going to say
come
that.
Come on now, guys. Enough is enough. So
yeah, it's like the first time it happens, or the first couple of times, you're reeling from the shock of, oh my goodness, what's going to happen next? And then you realise it's just the same thing that's going to happen over and over again, and you're just like, there's no, as you said, there's nowhere to go with that. It's like, where do you go from there? Do you boost it up,
horror.
or it's all jump scare horror. Yeah.
It's dumb horror, and like it's not to say like there isn't a place for that kind of like more kind of grotesque horror, but like you can do it effectively, and it has been done effectively before. But it just feels like Outlast games aren't that at all. They're just like really like it's just surface level shock. Like I don't know, like so something like Resident Evil 7 had those kind of gross moments as well, but I thought it integrated it quite well, and like actually made a really good solid game.
Yeah.
That and stuff in the way that I just feel like the Outlast games just don't do that anymore. So enough.
Yeah.
Cease and desist, or I don't know, I'll kick your doors down and give you a telling off. Put you in detention.
Yeah. So talking about like one of the most graphic horror games to date, and you're gonna go and give them a finger wag, being like, no.
I'll show them real horror.
Now I know where you live.
The horror of the naughty corner.
Oh god, exactly. Oh god, no. Not the naughty corner. God. Yeah, I thought we moved on from Silent Night, Deadly Night.
No, that style is alive and well, apparently.
Oh my god. Oh no. So, moving on from graphic violence, because this is a very wholesome, family-friendly podcast, of course.
I forget that MO.
So do I, so do I. Well, especially after that one that we did on, bad films. I think the family-friendly MO just went right down the tube in that one.
I hope you put an advisory warning on that one.
I think I did, but you know what? If I haven't, feel free to go check it out. In case you want to see what we're talking about. But yeah, moving on from that. So I have to admit, like, I really struggled to think of like one that I wouldn't want a sequel to, because don't get me wrong, there's like loads of them. Like initially I thought of like big blockbuster ones like Gears of War, because I feel as if Gears of War is just stagnating at this rate.
Yeah.
Like I played the fourth one, I played the fifth one, and I'm just like, no more. Just it's all the same things, but now they've got robots. I thought the same or similar to Halo because like 4 and 5 are so similar. You know, I was kind of thinking of those franchises, but then I kind of got my thinking cap on, and one of the games, which might be a kind of hot take / controversial view, but I would say a game like GoldenEye for the N64 probably shouldn't get a sequel, or like not a direct sequel. And the reason I say this is because it was one of those games that kind of defined an entire generation, and there have been mods of it, you know, with like the Source engine and everything, and people have tried to, you know, bring it back. But I feel as if in that way, if you do too much, like, you know, if they're going to say, oh, it's going to be the next, you know, because technically they did make a remake, did they not?
They did, yeah. It
of
was like
GoldenEye
2010 or something like that. They did with Daniel Craig.
Yeah, and it wasn't well received at all, was it?
Looked terrible.
Because I feel as if with games like that was a kind of game that defined a whole genre during that time, you know. It's like in its kind of own bubble, like its own kind of capsule of this was a game back then that, you know, had its own mechanics, had its own this and that. And to then kind of be like, oh yeah, we're just gonna, well, as I was saying with Banjo-Kazooie, oh, we're just gonna take the name and kind of slide it across. It's like, there's some games I think should be left alone, because it's like the Battlefront series as well. Like, I mean, the first two, absolutely fantastic. Then you play the, like, remakes, and you can't see it, but I'm doing, like, air quotes with my fingers. You know, remakes or, you know, spiritual sequel, whatever you want to call it, like, soft reboot, whatever, where they weren't trying to build on what was already there, which, you know, like, if a franchise is, you know, taken over, then you want to do something different. But I don't know, I felt as if, like, in that case, they were just, how to put this, like, very gently, it was basically they were taking a dead franchise, you know, digging it up, stripping its name off of it, and then slapping it onto someone else and saying, this is Battlefront now, or this is GoldenEye now. You know, it's like, you want it to evolve. Because the only reason I've said, you know, because you might be thinking, you know, oh, why haven't I, you know, put Banjo-Kazooie in that kind of bubble as well? Like, because that was, like, quite influential. But it's the fact that the mechanics kind of slowly evolved throughout the years. Like, same with shooter games. But I feel as if there's, like, a huge gap, if you know what I mean, between when GoldenEye came out and what shooter games are like nowadays, if you know what I mean. Like, at least with platforming, the same kind of core mechanics are there. You know, like, it's literally in the name, you've got a platform, jump on it, there you go. Like, there's not really... I mean, obviously you'll get mechanics that kind of change it around, but at the end of the day, it's still the same kind of idea, whereas GoldenEye N64, you could kind of think, oh, it's just shooting, but there was, like, so many small things in it as well, like, where you got rewarded for, like, exploring, you know, like the dam and everything, doing, like, side missions. I don't know, funny enough, that was made by Rareware as well. Same people.
Of course it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, same people who did Banjo-Kazooie. Yeah, but I don't know. I just feel as if I think that games like that. I mean, I don't know if you can think of any games that, you know, like, were classics of their day, but should probably be left alone.
I suppose, like in that same vein, something like Perfect Dark, which they did make a sequel to when the 360 was released. I had one of the first games I got for my 360. Really don't remember that much about it at all, which I think kind of says says a lot about the game. But it's that way. We kind of discussed this when we were discussing childhood games, however many weeks ago that was, when we talked about, I think to go back and play the original GoldenEye now, you need a heavy dose of nostalgia. I don't think if you've never played GoldenEye, you could go back and play GoldenEye and play it for any more than about 5 or 10 minutes. It is borderline unplayable. Yeah, just because of, and it's through no real fault of the only fault is that the game is that old. It's what was, you know, what was the technology at the time. Like, it's not because it's a bad game or anything, and it's clearly an influential and important game. But it's changed, as you said.
Absolutely.
It's changed. Trends have changed so much. Shooter games have changed. You know, so much now that you know it becomes difficult to go back. And we were talking about the difficulty of going back and playing the original Halo. You know, which is now coming up to be 20 years old this year.
Jeez,
you know, so what's GoldenEye is at 95, was it 96?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So, you know, like getting close to the 25 years now. Like,
yeah. Must be.
It's just of their time, and as I say as well, like I don't know where a sequel for GoldenEye would. I mean, the reboot showed that I think you shouldn't. Like, the reboot showed you shouldn't remake this because clearly it didn't work, and so I would agree. In terms of other games like that, it is interesting trying to think what what other games there were of that time. And this is the point where my Civ-like brain fails me.
No, I was just going to say, like, because at least, because it's weird, because you can kind of draw parallels, and again, like, I know I'm talking a lot about Banjo-Kazooie, but bear with me. But, yeah, it's like, there's kind of two parallels with those games. Like, you could both say that both of them were very influential in their respective genres. Like, obviously, you know, there were other games, like obviously Mario, Sonic, and so on, for platformers and things, but I feel as if at least, I don't know, it's like, on the one hand, you had one that stayed relatively the same, like Banjo-Kazooie, like, you know, still the same idea of exploration and things, and as soon as the, like, drastic shift in 2008 came out, like, there was no reason for it, almost. It's almost like having, you know, GoldenEye turn, like, you know, in 2008, you know, Microsoft buy up the rights and say, oh yeah, we're turning it into a cooking sim. And you're like, wait, what? No. Why would you do this? Which, yeah, and it would be Kinect exclusive or something, I bet you. And you'd be like, how dare you? How dare you come into how dare you come into my house? Take away my games.
The day of my daughter's wedding.
The day of my
games.
Yeah. It's true though. It's like just such a drastic shift, but it's like there is like such a kind of, so this is what I was thinking of, because at least with Banjo-Kazooie, because the kind of the mechanics hold up so well. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was on my channel streaming Banjo-Kazooie, and I think I got up to like, I got a good couple of levels in. Like I streamed it for about 3 hours, I think. I want to say 3.5 hours maybe less, but you know, like a good couple of hours at least. And it showed how well the game held up in 2021. That I could play it for so long. I mean, obviously there's like some jankiness. It's not a perfect game, but at the same time, it wasn't a game that I kind of went away from thinking, oh, that controlled terribly. But I remember years ago, again about the same time I discovered Time Splitters, I said to my friends who'd like came to visit me, I said, why don't we play GoldenEye? As you said, it did not go well at all. Like we played it and he was just, because he didn't have an N64 growing up, so he was just so confused. He kept saying to me like, oh, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, oh, you press that button. Oh, I don't know how to, you know, it wasn't enjoying it at all. And then a couple of years later we played another game, which again, it's kind of a similar one, but it was the game called GoldenEye Rogue Agent. And I don't know, have you ever played GoldenEye Rogue Agent?
Yeah, I used to have it.
Yeah.
I used to quite enjoy it.
Yeah, so I used to have it for the GameCube, and funny enough, I think it was a like memory issue, but it came on 2 discs. So it was like you can only play half the game on 1 disc, and you had to like take it out and insert the other disc to play like the second half of the game. Yeah, I remember that game being really good at the time. Like I played it for hours, I enjoyed it, and I remember seeing it in that second-hand shop CX, and I said like to my friend at the time, oh, we've got to buy this because it was like dirt cheap. It was like £1 or, you know, 50p, or as like the student metric apparently is these days, you know, like 1/10 of a Domino's pizza apparently. But yeah, I got it and I put it into the PlayStation 2 thinking, oh, I can't wait to play this, I can't wait to show this off to my friend, and then bam, it was like, what pixel is James Bond? You know, like the graphics did not hold up, the gameplay was even worse, and it was so like disappointing. You know, it's like one of those games, it's like, have you ever had that where it's like you recommend something you love to someone and then you kind of realise that it hasn't held up as well as you think it would?
Well, I had that experience. You were a third party witness to this when I'm not gonna say I like forced S-Banks to play the original Halo, but I think I heavily encouraged to play the original, and I believe he had a very, very bad time with it. Which led to some fractious arguments between me and him over it. But it is that way. It's that way. It's always one of these things you need to put advisory warnings on. Be like, oh, play this game, but you know, remember it's 20 years old or however long. You know, like things have changed. I mean, it's funny because I was trying to think a bit more about your question about any more games like from that time that they shouldn't get sequels or whatever, and I think there's a lot of games that can have sequels, but I think you need to very much evolve with the times. And the thing that came to my mind was Doom, Doom 2016.
Oh, yeah.
So Doom, obviously, a classic for its time of the '90s and everything, but that is a game that's very again. You can have fun with it, but I think it's one of these games again you need to have some sort of history with. Perhaps, like, I don't think it's something that if you went and somebody played it with no knowledge, they would find probably that enjoyable. Now at all, they'd find it very basic and quite limited.
I mean, it's a game I've never really played, but it's the Duke Nukem series.
Oh yeah,
where that was a game that, as far as to my understanding, it's a game that was really widely beloved. Everyone loved it when it came out, and then all of a sudden they tried to bring it back with a kind of, I don't know if you would call it a reboot or a sequel. I would assume sequel because it was like trying to follow on from the old games. But then a lot of the choices, like a lot of the infamous choices that they made in the game, just kind of sullied the experience of it as a whole, if you know what I mean. Like, nobody see when you say Duke Nukem, what do you think of first?
I think of maybe one of the most morally reprehensible characters.
Yeah, exactly. Gaming.
And I think of that horrific. I think of the horrific choices on that at that alien mothership level.
Yeah,
which I've not played, but I've just heard about it. Like,
yeah.
Why did anybody approve this? Why did this get through to the stage of being developed? And they're like, yes.
Yeah, exactly though. It's like you think of the infamous ones. And I mean, it's the same with like a lot of games. Like, look at Sonic. Like, when someone says Sonic, they immediately think, oh, Sonic 06. They don't, I mean, maybe they'll think of, the original game, but more or less, like, Sonic 06 is going to come up in conversation. Same with Banjo-Kazooie. Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts is going to come up. Like, people are going to kind of gravitate towards those negative ones.
Yeah.
And just before, like, we kind of wrap up, I'm just thinking, like, this is a kind of, like, final question for you. Do you think that a sequel does have the power to kind of sully, like, the good faith of the first game?
To an extent,
What'd you say?
To an extent, I think it can. I don't think. I mean, okay, I think it depends on the quality of the first game. I think if the first game was genuinely good and is a lot of fun and playable, even if the sequel is a steaming pile of trash, I don't think it will completely sully the first experience. What it might make you do is it'll make you sad because you might play the original and then be like, "Oh God, I remember when." I'm trying to think of an example now, but
Halo.
Halo's a fair point, I suppose. You'd think, God, like, how did we get to here? Some of the Resident Evil was a series that was going that direction for a while. Like, when you got to Resident Evil 6, you're like, God, you think back to the great one, you're like, how the hell did we end up here with this dumpster fire? So again, it can certainly bring a game series reputation down, but it depends. I think if the first game is just okay, then perhaps a sequel can just destroy that as well. But I don't know. I think if your original game is strong enough, it can survive. It can survive, the destructive power of a sequel.
I don't know. It's, as you said, it's kind of like a hard question to kind of think about, because I think probably the less games that a game has in its like library, like Duke Nukem, for example, that has 2 games before it? Or is it 1?
Yeah.
I think I could be totally wrong.
You can also play. They also released a download for that game, Bulletstorm.
Yeah.
Where you can the main character is replaced by Duke Nukem. So technically, I don't know if you want to count that.
Yeah.
Canon of Duke Nukem games.
In the technicality. But yeah, it's like, because there's not as many. I think that's the same with like a franchise like Gears of War. And I know I'm kind of picking on shooters here, but it is like kind of, I mean, I suppose it's the same in a way with Pokemon to an extent. Like, I mean, again, this will probably be like a Satsunami episode on its own, but I feel as if like big franchises like Pokemon haven't really done enough. And I don't know whether it's back to that idea of, is it just like stagnation? Is it just they want to churn out these games? Well, obviously they want to churn them out as fast as possible to get the money. Yeah. And those sweet loot boxes and other games. But in terms of Pokemon, it's like, I feel as if now they're getting to that stage where the sequels that are coming out are starting to almost outweigh the good faith of the originals, if you know what I mean. And don't get me wrong, that's a highly subjective like point from my side. But I mean, I don't know if you heard like about the whole controversy with the new games like Sword and Shield, that people.
I knew some people didn't like some of the choices.
Yeah, it was like there were. I mean, don't get me wrong; it's not gonna like affect them in any big way, but it's starting to get to that stage where it's like people are kind of. I mean, obviously, you get people who deny it. They're kind of like, "No, my favorite franchise can't be bad." It's almost like Stockholm syndrome with certain
Yeah.
franchises. It was like me with I think Gears of War probably, where I was playing the third one, and personally, I think it's mediocre, and
Yeah.
you play Judgment, and it's like it's still good, it's still good. And then, you know, you play like 4 and 5, and it's the same with like Halo. You play 4, you think, oh, I'm not a big fan, and then you play 5, and it's just that good faith of, oh, maybe they're just building into another story, and then they just drop the ball. Same with like Pokemon as well. It's like they had, the thing I think it is, it's just this like squandered opportunity that they
Yeah.
had like all these resources and things, and they had like a plan laid out for what they wanted to do, and they just kind of said, I mean, I don't think it's entirely, like, I don't want to say, oh, they're just being lazy, because, you know, it is. It's people, like, that have been working on this at the end of the day. But whether it's, like, you know, whether it's just, like, time constraints or whatever, it's something that I think is going to be a stain on, like, a franchise going forward.
Yeah.
To the... Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. You keep going. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, like, to the extent that the sequel kind of becomes more famous or infamous than what it originated from. I mean, look at Time Splitters. That's an example of the complete opposite, where you and I have never played the first one, but we've played, and it's the same with, like, I don't know if you've ever played Saints Row, where
I've
it's
never
like,
played the fourth one.
yeah, apparently it's the same for that, where a lot of people enjoy the second one more than the first one. It's a bit like it's a bit like, you know, the film Bad Boys 2.
Oh, yeah.
It's like that's the one you always hear about. You never hear about just the first Bad Boys. It's always Bad Boys 2. And it's the same with like, you know, it's like Time Splitters 2. That's the first one. It's
Yeah.
never like, you know, the original Time Splitters, or if you do hear it, then it's kind of like the, you know, the exception to the rule and things. But yeah, that's an example of like a game where, yeah, like, if that's your first game coming into the franchise, then yeah, that's a positive experience. But yeah, you can get the complete opposite, as I said, with like Duke Nukem, or it's, as you said, it's depressing watching a series that you loved for the longest time just go down the Swanee, and it's like, how could you do this to me? How could you do this?
It was just like, 'cause I was just thinking, it's almost like one of the adrenaline responses, like almost like that
Yeah.
fight or flight thing. It's that way. Does a disappointing or bad sequel, does that make you want to like go back to the original games and to the comfort of them and be like, oh, I can remember when it's good? Or does it make you just want to flee that game series and, you know, erase it from your mind and never touch it again because it's sullied? And I suppose that's just,
See,
it's going to be different with different people in what response you have, and how
yeah.
that a bad sequel does affect your opinion of the series as a whole.
See, now that's the thing. So, like, one of the things I've kind of picked up on with, like, streaming older games and kind of, like, going back to older games, you forget, you've got the, like, rose-tinted glasses and the nostalgia around the old games, and then you go back to them and you forget, like, there's a lot of, like, mechanics that you've gotten so used to in the franchise, like, in the sequels.
Yeah.
Like, especially with, like, Pokemon and things, there's, like, so much that they just cut out completely. And, like, you go back to the old ones thinking, oh, why does no one play these old ones anymore? And then you go back to play it, which is good for a one-off. I will say that it's good for like one playthrough, but then you play it and you're like, yeah, I can totally understand why people don't play this anymore. Which is a shame, but yeah, it's just that idea of them just like evolving and moving on, really, isn't it?
Well, that's it. You know, it is a growing experience, I suppose. And I suppose it does depend on what point of your life you're in, you know, and what you like and how if your gaming tastes change.
Yeah.
Can also be a factor, I suppose, as well. So yeah, again, it's just such a subject. I feel like so many of these topics we discuss, again, it's such a subjective thing. It kind of comes with that warning, being like, you know, other opinions are available.
Ah, man, just sequels. You can't live with them and you can't live without them. Because either way, one of them is going to disappoint, isn't it?
Yeah. If they don't come, it's disappointing. If they do come, it can be equally disappointing.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, we actually got a couple of viewers sending in like games that they would want sequels to.
Oh, nice.
And actually, I want to get your opinion on some of these. So, Craig, who you might know from the Beer and Chill podcast.
I am aware.
Yep. Awesome podcast, awesome person. He has put in the Discord server, he has said, actually funny enough, he was talking about Pokemon as well, but he said he wants a Pokemon Red Blue sequel, but in the style of Black and White 2. So that is quite interesting, actually, because do you still keep up with like the news with Pokemon and things, or have you been out the loop?
I'm gonna have to defer to you on this one.
Yeah,
It's not a series I know very well. I'm gonna quickly look up some pictures just so I can see what Black and White looked like.
Yeah,
Gameplay style, just so I have an idea. I'm just looking at it now, and
you're just. I was going to say you'll just get
revision.
Yeah, I was just going to say you'll just get like a really grainy black and white photo of Pikachu in a top hat and a monocle, just like oh.
What the heck is this?
Yeah, Black and White were the last games that used pixel art in the games. So this was like this was like before they moved from the 3DS, or sorry, from the DS to the 3DS, and they started getting fancy with the graphics. And when they moved over to the 3DS, they got rid of like sprites completely.
Oh wow!
It's a really weird choice because they keep saying, "Oh, because it's 3D, they want the not realism because it's Pokemon, but they want the like models to show off, like the hardware and everything."
Yeah.
I personally prefer the sprites because I feel as if in Black and White they had this perfect balance where the Pokemon actually moved along while you were battling, but it was still in that pixel art. It was still in that nostalgia. It gave you like a sense of nostalgia, but at the same time doing something new, which was really good. And then, yeah, they just got rid of that in Generation 6. It's Generation 6 where they got all the models that are just like lifeless, and it's a weird stylistic choice that they've continued with. And apparently, fun fact of the evening, Pokemon Sword and Shield actually used the same models from the 3DS games.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was the thing they were saying, that they were going to make new models and things for these, Pokemon, and they didn't. They just like copy pasted a lot of them over.
Wow.
Oh, it's one thing if you are going to copy and paste it, but at least don't lie about it. Not that it's going to affect them, but another one he said, which I'm on the fence here. I want your opinion on this. Simpsons Hit and Run.
A sequel.
Yeah, a sequel to Simpsons Hit and Run.
It's a difficult one.
Yeah, I personally would say I'm not. The only reason I'm saying that is, again, it's like that bubble of me thinking, oh, this was a great game when I grew up. And then I played it on stream for like a celebration stream, and I got to like the final like level, and I nearly threw the controller out the window because I was just so angry at some of the design choices.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah, it's just, sorry, for context, you have to like drive from like point A to point B across the other side of the map while carrying like a very fragile thing of nuclear waste in the back of your car. So if you get bumped, then it blows up, so you have to go back and collect more. When I got there, it's basically you have to park your car underneath this UFO. Long story. And it gets sucked up, but as the car's getting like sucked up to the top, the timer still goes down. So like I got to 1 second, and just as it was about to touch the UFO, it timed out and failed me on the mission, and that made me very, very salty to the game. I feel as if they are doing a sequel, then they have to overhaul a lot of things first, or make it more in the style of, did you play the Simpsons game?
Oh yeah, the kind of one that was like, was it the one that kind of like referenced, let's say, did pastiches of like a lot of other popular. They had like a Pokemon bit, and they had a Medal of Honor bit, didn't they?
Yeah. No, they did. Yeah, no, like something like
that one.
Yeah, something like that, maybe. Like obviously with cars, but I would rather it was something like that rather than them doing like a remaster or a reboot of it. I mean, maybe a reboot would be better than a sequel, but like something different than the core. Like I feel as if it's had its day.
I think that's where I'm leaning. I was going to make the kind of philosophical distinction that I don't think I want to see a sequel, but I wouldn't mind seeing a reboot. And we had that discussion before about, are we talking, how much, because obviously they do to an extent overlap to points, but we said more we were trying to talk about sequels as opposed to reboots. So I would go for that. I don't think I want to see a sequel, but I would take a reboot.
I'm definitely the same. So the other two that you mentioned were the Devil May Cry series, so the rebooted Devil May Cry series, which I have to admit I've never played it.
That's the one that the fans didn't like, isn't it? Is that the one where?
Yeah.
Is that the one where he has like he's like a different looking character and stuff? And
he's like
short black hair as opposed to the kind of like long white.
Yeah, I
know it was unpopular.
Yeah, I think you're right in that one. Yeah, it's like 2 players. I think you can, or not 2 players, but it's like 2 characters you can play as.
Oh, okay.
Or something.
Okay.
I could be totally wrong, but I'm assuming that's the one he's talking about.
I feel awful. Maybe I'm probably the worst person to have here because I've never played a Devil May Cry game.
No, neither have I.
And I
I'm the
really
same.
don't feel like I'm accomplished enough to say. I mean, what I will just say is it's bold to pick that one for
Yeah.
wanting a sequel. Just from there's just the hate that I remember hearing about when it came out. But
Hmm.
if it's a good game and you like it, then I
Yeah.
don't see why it shouldn't. I don't see why it shouldn't get a sequel. I mean,
Hmm.
can it not be like its own sort of thing?
Well,
It could still be within the overarching Devil May Cry series, but could it not be like
Mhm.
an alternate timeline or whatever you want it to be? So yeah, go on, make a sequel.
Yeah.
Make a sequel.
Well, I'm assuming that's the one he means because he said Devil May Cry and then put in brackets the reboot one by Ninja
Yeah.
Theory. So I'm assuming that's what he means.
I presume it will be. I think that is the one. I think.
Yeah. And the other one, sorry, just as the final one, he says Bloodborne, which, yeah, I mean, I've never played Bloodborne either, but I've seen more than my fair share of other people playing it to scare me off. It's definitely not my cup of tea, but I can see why people would want. Because, I mean, there's been like Dark Souls, or.
There's 3 Dark Souls.
Yeah, there was like 3 Dark Souls, and then there was Bloodborne, which. Then again, I don't think there actually is a sequel to Bloodborne, is there?
There's no sequel to it, but I think there should be because it does like from all I've heard, it's a really fantastic game. I played a little bit of it. I actually played a little bit of it at Craig's back in the day. And again, it's not totally. It's one of these games. It's not completely my type of game. It might well be if I've tried Dark Souls a couple of times and I've not reached that point where it's clicked and I've been like, okay, I can totally get into this. But yeah, it looks like a really good game. So yeah, make more.
Definitely.
So a sequel. Oh,
Yeah.
stamp of approval.
Bang, that's it. Stamp of approval. And the final one we have from Marta, who has said that she wants a sequel to Animal Crossing.
Well, there'll definitely be.
No,
There'll definitely be
definitely,
an
yeah.
anime. Does she mean like a direct? Here's the question because I know there's been a few different. There's been a few different.
Oh, yeah.
But like a direct sequel to New Horizons, is that the one? Like, so it's like more kind of the island based gameplay. And stuff. Like, I mean, I would take it.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
same.
Animal Crossing New Horizons was my game of 2020.
Oh,
Probably it's the game I played for the majority of the year.
oh,
I
well,
feel like maybe like most of the world, most of the video gaming world. It was our,
I do agree
it
with
was
you.
our Lord and Savior during all the lockdowns.
Well, our Lord and Saviour, Tom Nook.
Indeed, yeah. May his name be praised forevermore. So yeah, sequel. It's a fun game, and I'm sure they will make more because it's a good franchise and it's very popular. And yeah, I totally get why.
Oh, Tom Nook. I still have nightmares about him. So yeah, thank you once again, Adam, for hopping on to another episode of Satsunami.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot
Yeah.
of fun. So I'll keep coming back as long as you have me.
Yeah, I was going to say, would you believe this is episode 9 of Satsunami, which is actually insane.
Where does the
9,
time go?
9 episodes since we started this. I mean, technically 11 if you count like the 2 ones that I did with other streamers, but yeah, like 9 like core Satsunami episodes. That's crazy. So we're going to need to up our game next week and do like something
That's it. Well,
really special.
we're up to the challenge, I'm sure.
Yeah, well,
I believe in us.
yeah, we'll be going back to the drawing board. Being like, right, what can we rant about? So, yeah, if you would like to follow more of my content, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch under the name Satsunami42. I am also on TikTok, have no idea how it works, but you know what? I'm doing my best. So yeah, if you want to check me out there, I am in all of those places under the name Satsunami42, where you can find me. Until then, stay safe, stay awesome, and most importantly, stay hydrated. Bye guys.
Bye.